Hello, it's just me today to talk about WebAuthn and other things. So there's a clip of the Trump's latest outrageous cabinet meeting that he broadcast, where, like in North Korea, everybody has to praise the king and lie about him. And Tam Bondi has certainly learned to talk like Trump. She took the total number of pounds of fentanyl that were blocked at the border, which was apparently 3,400 kilos. And first she said they saved 100 million lives, and then she brought up to like 150, and then she said 258 million lives, just the way Trump keeps changing the size of his apartments. And they so they found apparently 2 milligrams is a potentially fatal dose of fentanyl. So if you take uh, 3,400 kilos and break that into chunks of 2 milligrams, then you get 258 million possibly lethal doses. So she said, we saved 258 million lives, which is 75% of the entire US population, which is stupid, of course, because the total number of people killed by fentanyl drug overdose in a year was only about 70,000. So, this is, I bet you could do a lot of stupid math like that. And it's just amazing how Trump has found a large cadre of Republican politicians that are just willing to become shameless liars, just like him. They've learned that this is how you do it. You just lie, you contradict yourself, you make up completely false statements, and the U.S. government, I guess, doesn't need any credibility, although obviously we do. I mean, so now they're wiping out education, scientific research. The dollar will no longer be the world's reserve currency. Our allies will no longer trust us, and we'll be isolated on a little island with North Korea and Russia and El Salvador as our only friends in the world. And Republicans are all on board with all this because all the Republican leaders are happy with it because they get more personal power and wealth, and that's all they care about. They're completely happy to burn down the country. And Trump's base, which appears to be something around 30% of Americans, just watch lies on propaganda like they do in Putin's Russia, and they just believe everything he says. They believe that this is all Biden's fault or something. So it's incredible, but I think it will all come crashing in. So apparently the big stores are going to run out of products in about another month. And that's when I think the people in the middle will move away from Trump. So if we can somehow make it to the next elections in 26, and if the Republicans don't manage to completely corrupt those elections, which they are trying to do, then the Congress, we may get the House back and be able to hold some of this back. We'll see. But as despicable as the Republicans are the 90% of Democrat legislators that are just standing there twiddling their thumbs while all this happens, with a very few exceptions, like Bernie and AOC and a few others. Anyway, so Elon Musk is moving back to focusing on Tesla. And there's a good article here on, let's see, where was this? Yeah, on Bloomberg. There's a good article about how he risks turning Tesla into the next Boeing. And they talk about what happened with Boeing. Boeing, for a long time, was considered a very safe company with very few accidents. And then they got bought out, or they switched to just making profit and cutting corners everywhere. And on top of that, I didn't know this. In addition to cutting all the corners and not bothering to make their products safe, they actually managed to influence legislation to stop the legislators from regulating them, which is, of course, exactly what Musk did. So Musk got in there, and the DOGE cuts at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration have been concentrated among staff-assisted self-driving risks. So he has, of course, removed the government oversight that would test Tesla for safety. And like I say, the safe companies ensure that everyone who works there has psychological safety, that they feel free to express ideas, ask questions, admit mistakes, and even disagree with superiors, all without fear. And Musk says that you should always tell him if you find a bad thing. But when you do, in 2014, an engineer came and told him that he had concerns about the safety of something to do with the Model S. And so Elon Musk told her, you have to resign. And if you don't resign, I'm going to deport all the members of your team with green cards. So everyone got the message that he couldn't care less about problems and defects and safety. And you can't trust him, which of course is obvious considering how much he lies and such. So it's we're heading into what just what Trump wanted, the Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age is not this great time he thinks it was. It was a time of no product safety, no social safety net, where the rich just did whatever they wanted and the poor just trampled underfoot. That's Trump's idea of a golden age, but I really don't think his voters will enjoy it as a golden age. And he can only soothe them by blaming it on Biden for so long. And of course, he's ordered an end to federal funding for NPR and PBS, although this will be resisted in the courts. But he does not want any actual accurate news agencies out there at all. That's always one of the first things. And I saw that they're now going to have private, government-funded private school education, which will teach students basically from the Bible, and also it'll start teaching them that the 2020 election was rigged. So we're going to have, again, North Korea-style false information in our schools. So it just is incredible. There's a very interesting cybersecurity story, though. This came out a few days ago. Windows RDP, Microsoft's remote desktop protocol, will let you log into servers using expired passwords, passwords that have been changed and revoked. And it absolutely works. I made a hands-on project doing it. The trick is you have to use a cloud account to log in, which is what Microsoft tries to get you to do now. Every time you put on Windows 11, it will say you have to log in with a Hotmail or Microsoft Outlook.com account, and it's very difficult to log in with anything else. And if you do that, and then you change it at the cloud service like hotmail.com, change your password, the old password still works. And I've tried to find any way to stop this behavior. Microsoft said, this is expected, this is fine. We did that so that in case you I actually doesn't make a lick of sense. What they said is, in case you can't reach the cloud service, you can still log in, but you're using a remote desktop protocol, so that machine must be networked. So I don't understand what they're thinking. But anyway, regardless, this is behavior you certainly would want to turn off. I mean, it is very common. You get these notices saying, oh, there's been some kind of security problem. You need to reset your password. Well, how good is that if resetting your password doesn't stop the old password from working? This is a really serious problem. This reminds me of a vulnerability I reported many years ago to a company saying your password has been exposed. And they responded, that password was not a security barrier. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What else is a password? So this is bad. Microsoft is pretending it's okay and nothing will happen, but I don't believe it. I think they're just trying to cover it up. And the main thing I'd say is there must at least be some way to turn it off. And I tried the obvious ways to turn it off. I tried going into Credential Manager and removing the credentials for the cloud service, and that didn't stop this problem. And I tried going into the group policy and turning off the setting that remembers previous passwords in Active Directory. And I checked that cache and it was down to size 0, and you still have this problem. So there is some other cache inside the Windows RDP server that remembers old passwords, and I can't find it to delete it. And this is a terrible security problem, and Microsoft needs to patch it. And even if they don't patch it, they need to give administrators who want to secure their machines some way to stop it. So if Microsoft doesn't do it, I would imagine within a week or so, some enterprising security researcher will find it and publish some kind of PowerShell script or something we can run to get rid of those cached passwords. It can't be that hard to do. In fact, I was thinking one way to find it would be to set up a new Windows machine and take an image of the hard drive or just a list of all the files, and then make a cloud account and log in once, and then take the difference and track down where did it store that password. There's somewhere in that machine is that new password. You ought to be able to track it down and write some kind of script to clean that stuff off. Anyway, so plastics have these chemicals called phthalates in them, which are in all sorts of things. They're in food packaging, plastics, lotions, and shampoos. They make plastic flexible, and apparently they're very dangerous and bad for you, although they're in all kinds of products. They say exposure to them contributes to 13% of all heart disease deaths between people ages 55 and 64 each year worldwide. So I guess we should ban those. I wonder why they weren't banned before. Although I imagine under Trump and RFK, no, there'll be no interest in any sort of toxins being banned, but perhaps after the next 4 years, someone might care. Um, so there's a nice article on by Dan Gooden again at Ars Technica talking about how hackers bypass multi-factor authentication. So when you log into a lot of services, you turn on multi-factor authentication, and then you'll get an SMS code to your phone, or you have an app on your phone that creates these random looking numbers, or you get a push notification where it pops up a box saying, "Is this you trying to log in?" And the problem is, if the attacker can trick you into going to a fake website with the name spelled wrong or something. So you think you're logging in, then they can perform a man-in-the-middle attack where you try to log into some service like Gmail. Then they take your password and forward it to Gmail. Then Gmail sends a request to authenticate it, and they forward that back to you to get the authentication code. Um, so this is pretty bad, but it turns out that Cloudflare is not vulnerable to this because they use the more modern service called WebAuthn. And WebAuthn is very simple. This is very much like the anti-cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. What WebAuthn does is it sends some kind of credential back, which is cryptographically bound to the URL and the device. So you can only use it to log into the right URL. So if you've gone to the wrong URL and your app pops up some kind of notification, that credential can only be used on the real website, not on the fake man-in-the-middle website. And it's also tied to your device. It can only be used from your device. So even if a criminal steals it, it won't work from their device. So I guess it encodes something like the MAC address or some other unique identifier of your device. This seems very simple and should be included all the time. So we should all be moving towards WebAuthn, and I think it's quite valuable to realize the weakness of the current two-factor system. Uh, all right, and so WorldCoin is coming to the U.S. I've heard about this for years. This was one of Sam Altman's early projects, and it was widely sneered at and balked and claimed to be a fraud. I'm not quite sure what to think about it, but what he thought of a few years ago, especially back when cryptocurrency and blockchains were really big, is he said, well, we're going to have universal basic income where everybody just gets paid an income to not have a job because AI and computers will do all the work and nobody will have jobs anymore. And therefore, we're going to have some way to keep track of how many people they really are. And now, of course, now that we're having all these bot attacks and simulated voices on Zoom calls and everything else, and our college is full of fake students, um, he'd like to have some way to identify humans. So he has this thing called an orb, which is a bowling ball looking round scanner, and he's been taking it around the world, starting in other countries. You'll go into a town and say, all you have to do is look into this thing, and it will take a picture of your eye and add you to the blockchain as a real human, and then you'll get paid a certain amount of WorldCoin, the cryptocurrency, for doing this. So people do it just so they can get like a small amount of money, which apparently they don't really get, or it's not really worth anything. And that's what this big scandal was. But anyway, now it's rolling out to America, and he is continuing with this. The idea being that he will have a blockchain based, supposedly secure registry of who's really a human. And I think this could serve a lot of purposes. Like right now, I have to fill in a ridiculous number of captchas to every web page to convince them I'm a human and not a bot. So maybe it could be used for that. Everybody wants to age gate social media and pornography now, so they'd like some way to prove your age. So maybe it could be used for that. They could record when you did it and say, well, I did it 18 years ago, therefore I must be at least 18, something like that, perhaps. I'm just, I've always thought this might have some benefit. On the other hand, maybe it's just handing your biometrics to someone that's going to be sloppy and lose it, and then you'll be more hosed than ever. We'll find out. They did roll it out in several American cities, including San Francisco, but apparently some of them broke when they tried to set it up at their launch in San Francisco, so that was a little embarrassing, but it's coming, and we'll see what comes of all that. May do some good. And the last one was pretty amazing. This is from Cyberscoop. I've heard over the last year about North Korean technical workers who will pose as, say, Germans or Americans and get jobs at companies. And then once they're inside, of course, they'll steal your company data, install malware, leak out your secrets, and help North Korea steal your money and such. And apparently, these guys went and interviewed a lot of workers and said nearly every CISO has spoken to has admitted they've hired at least one North Korean IT worker, if not a dozen or a few dozen. So apparently, this is a big campaign and a very successful one, and they have infiltrated hundreds of Fortune 500 companies. So that's a pretty terrifying thought. Um, like I'm saying though, it's hard to imagine how to prevent it. I mean, you have remote workers in other countries. All you ever see is them on a Zoom call, and if you can try testing them to see if they actually. That was one thing they did at another company that had these applicants. They would ask them to recommend a restaurant in the town they claim to be from, and things like that. And of course, they can't do it because they haven't really done enough background research. So they claim to come from a town in Germany, but in fact, they don't know anything about it. And but they could improve their research for that. And anyway, it's an important security risk to know about. And that's it for this one. I have another one on Tuesday.